Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take these, stacks of dense policy documents, technical frameworks, and confidential exec reports and turn them into actionable intelligence just for you.
Mm.
Today, we are focusing on what is uh, arguably the most critical and just rapidly emerging role in any modern organization, the AI risk manager.
That's absolutely right. And this deep dive, it's designed specifically to move past that abstract idea of responsible AI.
Right.
We want to give you a practical day-in-the-life guide.
Yeah.
The goal is simple, really.
Mm.
You're asking, what does this job actually look like on a Monday morning, when the rubber really meets the road?
How do you get beyond just talking about policy and actually implement something that, works and delivers real value?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you implement robust governance that not only keeps you compliant, but actually helps the business?
So our mission today is to pull together the core elements of a training guide from our source material. We're talking about a roadmap that covers the daily operational shifts, the indispensable tools that are now just part of the standard kit, and the critical certifications you need to actually land a job in this field.
Right.
We want to show you exactly how this role executes on these big global frameworks like the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, the looming EU AI Act, and the globally recognized ISO IEC 42001.
And crucially, how they measure the return on investment, or ROI, of building that organizational trust.
Before we jump in, to really appreciate the scope of this job, we should probably define the umbrella it operates under, which is AI governance.
We have to, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just a side function, it's the foundational structure. AI governance is, it's a set of principles, specific standards, and continuous practices.
Okay.
And all of it is designed to ensure that artificial intelligence systems are developed and used in ways that are reliable, trustworthy, and, socially responsible.
That sounds like a massive task, especially when you think that AI can touch everything from HR to, predictive maintenance on a factory floor. What are the specific risks governance is trying to minimize every day?
It's a multi-front war, truly. The frameworks are there to help you minimize the major risks, and that includes, core operational threats like security vulnerabilities in the model stack.
This technical stuff.
The technical stuff, yeah. But also non-compliance with these rapidly emerging, often conflicting regulations in different countries. And crucially, it's about minimizing your exposure to risks from biased outputs. We've seen that lead to just massive reputational damage and very costly lawsuits.
And data privacy, I assume?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with these huge, diverse volumes of personally identifiable information, or PII.
So if I'm hearing you right, the AI risk manager isn't just an IT security person or a compliance officer.
Not at all.
They're a compliance officer, an ethical technologist, a data governance expert, and a strategic resilience planner, like all rolled into one.
That's a great way to put it. And it explains the high demand for this kind of synthesized expertise. The urgency is there because these technologies are moving so fast from a proof of concept into core business operations.
Right. Everywhere. Financial services, pharmaceutical.
Exactly. And that complexity is precisely why we need the structure that you get from standards like ISO IEC 42001. That standard gives you a management system for AI, a roadmap for plugging these controls right into existing business operations. It's about making sure everyone from the board down to the developers is speaking the same language about risk.
Okay, so let's unpack this. You've landed the job. You're an AI risk manager. The first major operational shift happens, the second you sit down at your desk?
Immediately. Your morning routine has fundamentally changed. It's not enough to just check firewall logs and server uptime alerts anymore. The traditional cybersecurity duties.
So what are you checking?
You're monitoring the continuous living health of the AI models themselves.
That's a huge shift.
It is. The morning starts not with perimeter defense, but with the model health dashboard. The job has evolved into this continuous, critical monitoring to ensure two things stay intact: fairness and reliability. AI governance mandates that companies must continuously monitor data quality for two major forms of degradation: drift and bias.
Let's dig into drift, because that sounds subtle. Like it's not a big red flashing light. It's a slow, quiet deviation.
It's insidious. And that's because it often goes totally unnoticed until the impact is catastrophic. So drift happens when the model's performance slowly but surely degrades because the underlying characteristics of the input data are changing over time.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a credit risk model. It was trained successfully on housing market data from, say, 2010.
Okay.
Now, if that same model is making lending decisions today, In 2025, you're operating with drastically different economic conditions, consumer debt levels, regulatory environments. The model hasn't technically failed, but that subtle change in the input data, the drift, makes its outputs unreliable.
Or just totally irrelevant.
Exactly. Monitoring this is essential because reliability is the absolute foundation of any trust program.
And then, of course, there's bias. We've heard a lot about this. How complex is it to manage?
The complexity is in realizing that bias isn't just about bad data. It's about embedding real-world societal issues into automated systems. You have historical bias, where past human discriminatory decisions get replicated by the model.
So it learns our bad habits.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Or you have systemic bias, where the way the data is collected just inherently underrepresents certain groups. So preventing this isn't just about stopping the model from hallucinating and, making things up. It's about actively monitoring for evidence of discrimination.
And this continuous monitoring, this feeds directly back into that core governance structure you mentioned.
It does. It informs our three key imperatives. First, ensuring fairness. That means taking corrective action like retraining the model or making adjustment based on what you see in the dashboard.
Okay, so it's an active process.
It's very active. Second is enhancing transparency. This is huge for accountability. It means providing clear visibility and explainability into the models so stakeholders can actually understand how a decision was made. This is how you stop the black box problem.
I can see why transparency is so key, not just for trust, but for your legal defense.
Yeah.
If you can't explain why the AI did what it did, you can't defend that decision in court.
You're 100% right. The ability to audit the decision-making process is the ultimate legal shield. And the third massive imperative, since these models are just eating data constantly, is protecting data privacy.
Right.
So the AI Risk Manager's morning includes governing this massive flow of data according to privacy policies, security protocols, and international laws like GDPR, making sure sensitive PII is handled securely.
This all brings us back to some real-world examples, and they're pretty stark reminders of why this monitoring is just not negotiable. Let's talk about that iTutor group case.
Yeah, the iTutor group case is a perfect illustration of historical bias being put into operation with really costly results. So this was a remote tutoring company, and they used AI recruiting software that was trained on their historical hiring data.
And I'm guessing that data wasn't perfect?
It inadvertently encoded the existing age biases within the organization. The result was the system just automatically rejected older female applicants, age 55 and up, and male applicants age 60 and older.
Wow. And the consequence wasn't just a bad hire, there was a financial settlement.
A very substantial one. $365,000 to settle an age discrimination suit. The fact that an automated system was just running without oversight, replicating and reinforcing these prejudices at scale, it just shows the profound legal liabilities in unmonitored AI.
And we saw something similar with Amazon's recruiting tool, right? Back in 2018.
Yes, a classic cautionary tale. It consistently showed gender bias because it penalized resumes that had the word women's in them just based on historical data where men dominated the tech roles. They had to scrap the whole tool. It really underscores that monitoring for bias isn't some technical afterthought. It's a core function of minimizing legal and reputational risk.
That makes the need for these model health checks crystal clear. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about ensuring the internal health of the models. What about looking outward at external threats? The modern risk role is all about operational resilience.
Absolutely. This is where we see the shift from reactive defense to predictive risk modeling. This is a powerful strategic asset because it completely transforms how you allocate your resources. AI analyzes historical data, combines it with real-time environmental signals.
What kind of signals?
Everything from macroeconomic indicators to weather data plus your own internal logs, and it forecasts potential operational disruptions.
I get the forecasting part, but businesses have always done forecasting. What's different here? What does AI provide that a traditional spreadsheet model lacks?
Visibility and speed at scale. Traditional forecasting relies on slow, aggregated data. AI, especially with deep learning, can process time series data, natural language. It can anticipate disruptions much, much earlier.
So what does that let you do?
It lets leadership act preemptively. You can reroute supply chains days before a geopolitical event or strengthen specific network defenses before an attack vector is widely exploited. It just drastically cuts down the time between spotting a threat and responding to it.
We have some really fascinating concrete metrics on this idea of real-time incident detection.
We do. Systems are now designed to just continuously ingest and normalize these massive amounts of data from network logs, application performance, IoT devices, to automatically flag anomalies that older signature-based tools would just completely miss.
You're talking about the Walmart case study, right, with their
Yeah.
8R platform.
Exactly. Look at that case. They deployed over 3,000 distinct machine learning models just to continuously monitor system health across their massive infrastructure.
3,000 models, just for monitoring. That is a truly insane scale of continuous risk coverage. What was the measurable impact?
The impact was immediate and huge in terms of speed and coverage. Within just 3 months, ADR hit a remarkable 63% incident coverage.
So a huge majority of their systems were under this intelligent watch.
Yes. And crucially, they cut their mean time to detect, or MTTD, by over 7 minutes compared to the old methods. For a business like Walmart, running on razor-thin margins and massive scale, every minute of detection time you save is vital for minimizing downtime and protecting revenue.
But detecting it fast is only half the battle. You said it before. Machine speed threats require a machine speed response, which brings us to autonomous response.
Absolutely. Detection without containment is just a very fast alert. So AI-driven systems are now being embedded directly into the Security Operations Center to not just alert, but to trigger automated workflows.
So if it sees something weird on a laptop, it can act on its own.
It can. It can autonomously trigger microsegmentation, it can isolate that endpoint, or block the malicious activity.
The speed is impressive for sure. But for a chief risk officer, that level of automation must raise a serious question about safety. How does the AI risk manager make sure that a 65% faster response doesn't also create a 65% increase in false positives that shut down the business?
And that is where the governance policy and the rigor of the testing come in. That's the job. The AI risk manager has to ensure these autonomous systems operate with very high confidence thresholds and, critically, that they have predefined policy-governed escalation paths.
So it knows when to call a human.
It knows when to call a human. And when organizations get this right, they've seen their mean time to containment drop by over 65%. And that reduction isn't from people working harder. It's from rapid, precise isolation. It turns incident management from, reactive crisis mode into proactive, measured resilience planning.
Okay, so that brings us squarely to the middle of the AI risk manager's day. Morning monitoring is done. Now the focus shifts to internal audits, compliance, and basically being the central translator between data science, legal, and the C-suite.
Yeah, this midday task list is really heavy on governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, and that entire landscape has been just profoundly changed by automation. We're talking about the convergence of AI and robotic process automation, or RPA.
Automating the repetitive, rule-based stuff that used to take forever.
Hundreds of man-hours, exactly.
Can you give us some tangible examples of where RPA or AI is taking over that manual lift in GRC?
Think about evidence gathering for an audit. Historically, compliance meant generating these massive, bespoke evidence reports or performing periodic access entitlement reviews for critical systems.
Just verifying who has access to what and if they still need it.
A tedious manual process. Now, RPA bots can automatically gather the required data, cross-reference it with authorized access lists, fill out the standard compliance forms, and submit all the documentation for review. It dramatically reduces manual effort and, crucially, minimizes the risk of human error.
And this is where generative AI starts to move beyond just simple automation and into some real intellectual heavy lifting, right? Like document synthesis and risk identification.
This is where it gets really powerful. Gen AI is exceptionally good at speeding up, automating, and scaling compliance work by finding and summarizing complex, unstructured information across huge data sets.
So in a field like law or finance,
Right. You're analyzing these dense, complex documents, think mortgage-backed securities contracts, procurement terms of service, years of litigation records, to quickly identify and flag potential risks, non-standard clauses, or regulatory exposures.
that sounds like a fundamental efficiency boost. It lets the expert focus on high-impact interpretation instead of spending weeks just collecting data.
The time savings are revolutionary. And you can use LLMs to summarize lengthy meeting notes from risk assessment interviews, turning this, qualitative subjective discussion into a structured risk document almost instantly.
And this extends outward too, right, with risk horizon scanning.
It does. Instead of just relying on internal scheduled audits, teams can continuously scan massive external data sources, news feeds, regulatory change trackers, dark web intelligence to uncover potential problems that weren't even on their radar. It transforms the old static risk assessment into a continuous, data-driven, proactive process.
This high-level synthesis brings us to a new technical skill that is just vital for the modern risk professional. It's less about writing Python code and more about mastering the conversation itself. We need to master prompt engineering for risk.
This is maybe the most necessary new competency. The central challenge is precision. How do you get Gen AI to pull specific, reliable risk factors from a complex compliance document without it making up plausible-sounding but completely wrong information?
The high-stakes hallucination.
Exactly. The quality and reliability of your audit output is now directly proportional to how skillfully you formulate the prompt.
So walk us through what a good prompt looks like in an auditing context.
Okay, let's take control design. Specifically, change management, which is a key IT control. A vague prompt might be, how do I manage changes?
Which would give you a generic Wikipedia-level answer.
Right. A high-quality structured prompt from an AI risk manager would be something like, considering the foundational elements of the ISO IEC 42001 and COBIT frameworks, what are the 5 common and non-negotiable elements of a strong change management control design? Detail the purpose of each element.
Wow, okay. That's specific, it's role-based, and it's aligned to known frameworks. So what would a quality AI output look like, and why is that important for the auditor?
A reliable output should confirm specific structured elements based on best practices. It would likely include 1. A formal risk and impact assessment.
To quantify the potential damage.
Exactly. 2. Involvement of a change advisory board, or CAB for governance. 3. Clear segregation of duties, or SOD. The person requesting a change can't be the one approving it.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. 4. Mandatory testing and validation. And 5. Critically, clear backout and recovery plans, because even perfect changes can fail in production.
That detailed response is valuable, but it all relies on the auditor knowing how to validate those answers. What if the AI just hallucinated and said, you need a change wizard committee instead of a CAB?
That's the most important part. The human element, especially professional skepticism, remains absolutely essential. The AI risk manager has to develop strong output evaluation skills, the ability to look at that response and instantly know if it's framework aligned or just a plausible sounding fabrication.
So the AI is an assistant, not a replacement for expertise.
A very powerful assistant, but yes. Governance policies have to explicitly define which decisions are AI-assisted and which must have human judgment and final approval.
That intense focus on data integrity and human oversight leads perfectly into the mid-afternoon part of the job. Intense collaboration. The risk team can't operate in a vacuum, especially when you're talking to the people who are actually building the models, the data scientists.
Collaboration is truly foundational to responsible AI. The AI risk manager has 2 main mandates during the model development lifecycle. The first is ensuring data provenance.
So tracking the origin, the lineage, and every transformation of the data.
Every single data set, from collection to the final training set.
And why is tracking the data's family tree, so to speak, so vital for risk?
Because the model's integrity is entirely dependent on the data's integrity. If the source data is corrupt, biased, or handled improperly, the resulting model is automatically compromised. Data provenance gives you the audit trail to trace any model failure back to its root cause.
And the second mandate is about communicating the risk profile before deployment.
That's the role of model cards. The model card is the mandatory documentation, a standardized transparency report that discusses the model's functionality, its intended uses, its limitations, the data provenance, and crucially, the bias control requirements before it goes live.
So the risk manager is reviewing that card to make sure the developers have put the right guardrails in place.
Rigorously. They're examining the training data to mitigate ethical failures before they can manifest as costly lawsuits.
Ultimately, this collaboration is really just about reinforcing foundational cybersecurity principles, like the famous CIA triad, but applying them to this new, complex AI stack.
Absolutely. The CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, is the bedrock of responsible AI. Confidentiality ensures only authorized users can access sensitive assets. Integrity and authenticity are paramount in AI. If an attacker can subtly change the training data, they destroy the model's integrity.
And finally, availability.
Availability and non-repudiation mean the AI service is there when you need it, and you can prove who did what. The AI risk manager's job is to translate these foundational security requirements directly into the AI development pipeline.
So we've really explored the job-demanding mix of monitoring, auditing, prompt engineering, and intense communication. Now, for a lot of our listeners, the big question is, how do I get this job? The next part of our deep dive is all about the essential upskilling roadmap.
The core advice for anyone transitioning into this field is this. You don't just need to learn to code.
Yeah.
You need to learn to audit the code.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. You don't need to be a Python expert who can write ML algorithms from scratch, but you absolutely have to understand technical concepts like model robustness and specific security vulnerabilities so you can effectively question the developers and verify their controls.
So what exactly is model robustness, and why is auditing for it so different from auditing a traditional application?
Model robustness is the model's ability to maintain high performance, even when it's faced with subtle or malicious changes to its input data. Auditing for this is complex because AI threats are just fundamentally different. The CISO and the AI risk manager have to be acutely aware of specific AI attack vectors, many of which are detailed in frameworks like the IDOR Atlas Matrix.
Okay, so let's break down the major attack vectors we're seeing.
We need to understand 4 big categories. First, prompt injection. This is where malicious users manipulate the instructions given to a large language model, trying to bypass security filters to pull out sensitive information.
Right.
Second, data poisoning, which is maybe the most insidious. This is the intentional insertion of malicious mislabeled data into training data sets to corrupt the model's output or even insert hidden backdoors.
Those target the training phase. What about threats that happen when the model is live and making decisions?
That brings us to adversarial evasion. This involves making tiny, almost imperceptible changes to input data, we call them adversarial examples, that trick a model into making a completely wrong decision.
Like changing a few pixels on a stop sign image to make an autonomous car see a yield sign.
That is the classic, terrifying example. And finally, there's model theft, which is basically digital industrial espionage, replicating the behavior of a proprietary AI model to steal the intellectual property inside it.
It sounds like the defensive mechanisms the risk manager needs to audit have to be equally specialized.
They absolutely must be. The role requires championing these mitigation strategies. So, to counter those evasion attacks, you use something called adversarial training, where you intentionally expose models to malicious inputs during the learning phase to make them more robust.
You're stress testing the model.
Exactly. And the AI risk manager confirms those stress tests happened and the model passed.
What about managing huge data sets while maintaining privacy, especially when you need to collaborate, like for cross-institution fraud detection? That just sounds legally impossible.
That's where a crucial privacy-preserving AI technique called federated learning comes in. Its whole goal is to minimize data disclosure risk while letting multiple organizations collaborate on threat intelligence.
So financial institutions, for example, they can't pool their raw transaction data.
No way. Regulation, competition.
Yeah.
They just can't. So instead, they deploy federated frameworks where each bank trains a local model on its own private data, and only encrypted, aggregated model updates are shared for secure global learning.
So the global model gets smarter from everyone's data, but it never actually sees the raw, sensitive customer data from any single institution. Does that actually work as well?
The efficacy is proven. Studies show these federated systems achieve performance metrics that match or even outperform conventional centralized models in things like fraud detection. They get high area under the curve, or AUC, scores often over 0.95.
Okay, you're going to have to translate AUC for those of us who aren't data scientists. What does a high score mean in practical terms?
Certainly. The AUC measures the system's overall ability to discriminate, how exceptionally accurate it is at telling the difference between a true fraudulent pattern and normal legitimate activity. A score over 0.9 is excellent.
Got it. And you mentioned F1 scores.
Right. The F1 score is a measure of the model's accuracy that balances its precision, so avoiding false positives, and its recall, which is avoiding false negatives. An F1 score around 0.91 means the system is both highly reliable and highly comprehensive in spotting threats, all while protecting data privacy. It unlocks collective intelligence without compromise.
Now that we know the defensive posture and the knowledge base, let's talk career acceleration.
Yeah.
What are the crucial certifications that translate these abstract concepts into actual enterprise policy?
The certification roadmap should really lean toward programs focused on operationalizing governance, moving from reading policy to implementing it. 2 stand out immediately. The first is the NIST AI RMF Architect Certification. This focuses on leading AI programs and actually operationalizing the NIST framework itself, the global standard for responsible design, deployment, and monitoring. It's about building the structure.
And the second 2 credentials seems to focus more on the regulatory and compliance side.
That would be the IAPP, AIGP, or AI Governance Professional. The International Association of Privacy Professionals created this specifically to provide the standardized frameworks you need for regulatory success, tightly linking expertise in privacy, ethics, and governance.
So getting both of those would position someone as this CO 2.0 you mentioned.
Yes, as an AI-driven business risk strategist. Moving past that reactive defender posture to actively integrating legal, ethical, and compliance concerns across the entire product lifecycle.
This sounds less like a single course and more like a structured journey. Let's lay out the full upskilling roadmap, starting with the basics.
It absolutely has to be a phased approach. Phase 1 is foundations. You have to master the vocabulary. You need to know what an LLM is, how to define model drift, and critically, how to communicate the danger of a hallucination. Take foundational courses like those on AI governance just to get the common lexicon down.
Then you move to the global regulatory playing field, which is really dominated by one piece of legislation right now.
Phase 2 focuses on frameworks and regulatory alignment. This is mastering the global standards, and the EU AI Act is the most significant regulatory framework on the planet right now. It's crucial knowledge because it uses a risk-based approach, sorting AI systems into 4 levels: unacceptable, high, limited, and minimal risk.
And that high-risk category comes with some very strict mandatory requirements that an AI risk manager would have to enforce.
Incredibly strict. For any system deemed high risk like AI, used for credit scoring, medical diagnosis, or managing water infrastructure, the compliance burden is huge. They have to implement a rigorous risk management system, adhere to strict data governance standards, maintain quality management systems, and undergo mandatory external conformity assessments.
Wow.
And they have to be registered in a public EU database. So the role requires close collaboration with legal and engineering to enforce all of this.
And since we just talked about those technical threats like prompt injection and data poisoning, how do you connect those back to the formal risk assessments required by the EU AI Act?
This is where practical technical tools meet compliance. The AI Risk Manager uses resources like the ITARI Atlas Matrix, which breaks down the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, that adversaries use to target AI. So when you're doing that mandatory risk assessment, you use the ATLAS matrix to systematically identify potential attack vectors like evasion or poisoning, and then you demonstrate that you've implemented the right security controls against each potential TTP. The ATLAS matrix provides that necessary rigor.
And finally, theory meets reality. How do you move from knowing the frameworks to actually enforcing them?
Phase 3 is tools and practical mastery. You have to get hands-on experience with the actual GRC and security platforms that automate and monitor these processes. We're talking advanced tools like Microsoft Security Copilot, IBM Watson Governance, or Darktrace. Getting comfortable with these enterprise-grade tools is critical for moving beyond theoretical policy discussions.
That brings us to the biggest challenge for any risk leader: justifying the expense. We have to talk about the business case. How does the AI risk manager prove their value to the C-suite? Why isn't this just another cost center?
The manager has to shift the reporting focus entirely. Away from measuring activity levels, we wrote 10 new controls, and toward measuring strategic outcomes, we reduced operational risk by 20%. And the financial argument is compelling. Strategic investment in trust pays measurable dividends.
Really?
Yes. Analysis consistently shows that organizations that implement a high number of trust-related actions, meaning they prioritize governance, accountability, transparency, they correlate directly with achieving their expected business benefits at a much higher rate.
So that completely refutes the common idea that strict governance slows down innovation. It sounds like governance is actually the prerequisite for maximizing value and scaling safely.
It is the mechanism that unlocks that value. And we have data that confirms the quick time to value. 74% of executives report seeing a positive return on investment on at least one generative AI use case within the first year.
So they're seeing value not despite the governance, but because of it.
Exactly, because the governance enabled the safe deployment necessary to reap that value. And it's not just about speed, it's about quality.
The quality of the defense is improving.
Dramatically. This is the difference between efficiency and strategic efficacy. Early adopters of agentic AI reported a 67% positive impact on their security posture. This confirms that AI is improving the quality of their defense, not just automating old manual tasks.
Okay, let's translate that into the cold, hard key performance indicators, the KPIs that a risk manager uses when reporting up to the executive level. What metrics show real, measurable progress?
When you're talking risk reduction efficacy, the focus is always on speed. Specifically, the reduction in mean time to detect MTTD, and mean time to respond, MTTR. Those are the lifeblood metrics.
So you'd have a target like 50% faster incident triage.
Exactly. Or look at MasterCard. They use their decision intelligence system to detect fraudulent activity in 50 milliseconds. 50. Analyzing over 160 billion transactions a year. That kind of speed, that millisecond-level reaction, is the measurable financial value of AI in risk mitigation.
Beyond security speed, you have to quantify operational efficiency. How much manual labor did this new structure save the company?
That's where the RPA and Gen AI tools prove their worth directly to the bottom line. Executives want to see metrics showing time reduction. You'll see targets like up to 80% time reduction in manual access reviews, or just a huge drop in the number of routine security tickets. That directly translates to resource optimization.
And finally, the efficiency of compliance itself.
Compliance efficiency is measured by the reduction in audit prep hours, which are notoriously expensive, and a reduction in the severity of external audit findings. Effective AI governance can lead to goals like a 55% improvement in regulatory compliance adherence, which minimizes the risk of fines and lowers your audit costs.
As we look forward, the fundamental calculus of defense is changing. You said it before. Defense has to match machine speed. That urgency brings us to the need for autonomous defense as a strategic priority.
This is the future. The fundamental strategic challenge is the acceleration of threats. Adversarial AI agents are automating and streamlining attacks, everything from hyper-realistic deepfake scams to faster account takeovers. Gartner predicts that by 2027, AI agents will cut the time needed to exploit known account exposures by 50%.
That shrinks the window for a human to intervene to milliseconds.
It makes human intervention an unacceptable risk in many scenarios. The AI risk manager has to champion investments toward autonomous risk remediation. This means self-healing access controls, dynamic privilege adjustment based on real-time risk scores. The capital has to go toward agentic AI solutions that can perform preemptive defense at machine speed. Waiting for a human analyst to click an alert is just too slow.
So given that AI-accelerated threat landscape, what is the single most critical defensive investment required right now that the AI risk manager should be prioritizing?
Given the urgency of AI-accelerated account takeover threats, which all rely on exploiting weak authentication, the single most crucial near-term defensive investment has to be expediting the move toward truly phishing-resistant, passwordless multi-factor authentication, MFA.
So things like security keys and passkeys.
Exactly. That foundational step addresses the primary vulnerability that adversarial agents are exploiting with increasing speed and sophistication today.
This deep dive has really shown the profound transformation of the risk role from, a perimeter defender to a strategic business partner. The AI risk manager is that critical risk translator between the technical implementation, the ethical development, and complex legal compliance.
It demands continuous adaptation and learning. Success really hinges on a strategy focused on auditing, mastering global governance frameworks, and strategic AI leadership.
Yeah.
When they do it right, they transform this technology from a complex source of anxiety into a measurable enabler of business resilience and profitable growth.
It's a dynamic, high-stakes, and truly impactful job. The ultimate mission, really, is to operationalize trust at machine speed.
And if the core job is to anticipate failure, measure trust, and ensure the organization adheres to current regulations, then this raises an important question for every aspiring risk leader out there to consider.
Go on.
If regulation is always slow to catch up to technology, what hidden risk of failure, something that's not yet codified in any law, must the AI risk manager foresee and solve today to prevent the major, unprecedented lawsuit of tomorrow?
Something to keep in mind as you navigate this rapidly accelerating world. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.